I'm joined now in the studio with somebody who really needs no introduction. All I can really say is that he had a hideous childhood and he sold a lot of books. I'm speaking, of course, of Augusten Burroughs. Good evening, Augusten.
Hey, how you doing?
Hey, look, I'm all right. I've been trying to get hold of you for about 3 years now. I met you at the Writers' Festival, Sydney Writers' Festival in 2005.
Right.
You remember that?
Yeah, oh yeah, no, I do.
Well, you say that you never forget a face. Is that true, or is this something...
No, I do forget faces. I don't think I've said that. I think I have a horrible memory. I have no short-term memory at all. I can't even remember what I've even done today. But
I would say you've been on a book tour.
Yeah, no, I remember parts of that, but it mashes all together. The thing that's weird with my memory is that for whatever reason, if I'm interested in something or it's horrible and affects me or it's great, I'll remember everything about it. And it doesn't matter when it occurred. So I can remember certain things from being 8 months old or 15 months old, and other things you'd think I'd remember, I don't remember, and then there's a lot I don't remember, but it's useful for writing about my life like I do. The downside is that it's very visceral, so when I'm writing about like my father and Wolf at the Table, it's very real, so it's very uncomfortable, you know. It's not fun, but it's good when I've been able to go through it and move past it.
Yes, well, A Wolf at the Table is a lot darker than your other memoirs.
Yeah, it's not a funny book. The rest of them are, you know, funny. The reason for that is because my sense of humor really kicked in when I was like 12, living with my mother's psychiatrist, the running with scissors years.
Yeah.
And that's because it was so catastrophic. It was so incredibly stressful to have lost my mother, literally. I mean, her mind split. And then to be living with these people, you know, these strangers. And strange strangers, you know, in this very eccentric world where up was down and the sky's not blue, it's red. So I started just automatically to focus on the absurd and what was funny or ridiculous or gross or nasty or foul or skanky or whatever about my circumstances. And that then became the lens through which I would see everything for the rest of my life. And it, you know, it's a safety raft. Humor's a way of pushing back reality. It's a buffer, a little bit of a buffer, and it can help you float from one catastrophe, in my case, to the next.
Yeah.
But A Wolf at the Table is earlier. I'm much younger, and it's about my father. And I didn't have that sort of defense mechanism finely refined yet, so it's a more earnest book.
Yes.
My father was broken. There was something in his head that was broken. I mean, the best way that I could describe it is that he didn't have that human empathy and compassion and all that stuff that makes us human. He didn't have those. You know, when someone you know has a great smile, the origin of the smile is, you know, it's in the chest. I mean, you feel it in the middle of your rib cage. It's just almost a side effect that it shows up on your face. But my father didn't know that. To him, it was exposing your teeth and showing off your throat. And that's why when he smiled, you just wanted to flee.
Well, he had ugly, disgusting, rotten teeth.
Well, he had ugly, disgusting, rotten teeth, too, but he had ugly, rotten, disgusting motives. I mean, my father couldn't experience emotion unless he could sort of stimulate it and then observe it. So the easiest emotion was, you know, rage or fear.
Yeah.
And that's why he was so predatory. But he was, you know, an actively homicidal man throughout my youth. So this is an extreme story. I mean, not everybody had a father like this, but what I have found is that a lot of people didn't have great fathers, and yet when I would go to like the bookstores and look for memoirs about the relationships between fathers and sons, you'd think that everyone had a great father except me. I mean, it's all the sports books and bonding books, and you know, I just didn't think that reflected reality. I mean, I know enough of my friends had lousy fathers. Maybe they weren't crazy serial killers like mine, but they were drunks and losers, and you know, they beat the moms and they walked out, you know, and they screwed the kids. I mean, men do horrible things. Now, this isn't to slam the great fathers. Lots of people had great fathers, and at like the signings, what'll happen, it's funny. People come up to me and they're always shy and apologetic when they do this, and they say, well, I wanted to get a copy signed, but I had a great dad, you know, and I just want to get it signed for him. And that makes me feel great, because when I think about it, it's like the perfect thing, you know, for the great dad. You know, thanks for not being this.
Oh, yeah, fair enough.
That hit me when I was on tour, and it was, you know, moving.
Yes, well, you do say that the reason you write so many memoirs is because there's just so much to say, and so many people do relate to a greater or lesser extent with what you've been through.
Right. You know, the fact is that I have lived many lives and had lots of experiences, and it gives me a wealth of material on which to draw. That's why I can keep writing memoirs. I've always written about myself and my life, and it's clarifying. It helps you to understand, and it gives you perspective, and it provides you with clarity. I don't know that it's necessarily healing, because the reality is you don't heal from certain things.
No.
You never heal.
Maybe the scab heals over, but there's still a festering pustule inside.
Yeah, well, there are certain things that you won't be able to do. For anyone who's read my book, Dry, for example, the one person in the world that I loved died, and the lack of him is a part of me, and nothing makes it go away, and nothing makes me happy in that area. The fact that he died is what changed everything in me. I mean, when I was a little kid, I wanted to be famous and be on the Oscars, and I didn't give a shit about that. And it's not why I became a writer, to be rich and famous.
No.
It's liberated me from a lot of things. I mean, I really don't care what people think. I'm not here to impress anybody, and I would feel that no matter what. And that is the great gift of loss and tragedy. What you used to value doesn't matter. The things that matter to me now are the relationships and the real stuff, and finding people who are vertical and not horizontal, where you can go deeper and deeper and deeper, and it's just not more of the surface spread out over greater distances. Yeah. And, that's hard to find. I mean, that's not easy to find.
Tell me about it. But you divide your time between New York City and Massachusetts. Yeah. You live next door to your brother, is that right?
Yeah, we live next door to each other. We get along, like brothers do. We hate each other. But I can, the thing is, I can live anywhere. It always makes me feel uncomfortable when I talk about where I live. And the reason for that is because people always assume that I live there, so I must love it, or I live there because I love it. And I just kind of moved back to my childhood hometown. And in some ways, it was a horrible mistake. But Dennis, my partner Dennis, he's made friends in the area, so I can't drag him out of there now that it took me so much effort to get him out there in the first place.
Yeah.
The thing is, I can be happy anywhere because I live in my computer. I've been online since 1985. Before there wasn't online, I was online with my modem coupler and the BBS systems typing into the void. So I just live in my computer.
Well, that's where you and I differ. I share a lot of your things.
But not the
computer.
Not the computer
I only
thing?
just got a computer this year.
Oh, my.
I really am a bit of a
late adapter.
Yes, but that's okay.
Yeah.
What I was going to say, though, is that towards the end of the book, you discuss the death of your father, and you never really reconciled, ever. No. You have reconciled with your brother. How about your mother? Do you sort of see her? Have you forgiven her for giving you up at such an early age?
Yeah, it's not even about that I don't forgive. It's a little bit different. With my father, when he died, I was expecting to feel grief or, a well of repressed grief or something, but I didn't. I felt relief.
Yeah.
And to this day, I've never thought about him in terms of missing him.
No.
And that makes me sad sometimes. But, the fact of the matter is, if you take somebody who is blind and drag them out to the Sydney Harbor and you insist upon describing to them the opera house and how beautiful the sunset looks as it glances over, the supple skin of the curves, they'll listen to you, but they won't feel profound agony that they don't see it. I mean, you really don't miss that which you have never known. So with my father, that's the situation. With my mother, it's a little bit different. I understand the reasons why she gave me up. And, I love my mother because she's my mother and there's that primal feeling there. But I realized as much as I may love her, I don't like her. Okay. I don't like the person she is today. It's not about the person she was even then. So there won't be a reconciliation there. I don't think there's anything to reconcile. There's been too much time. I have not had a relationship with that woman since I was a little boy, since I was in the single digits of my life. So it's almost as if she died many, many years ago. I mean, my mother, when I think of her, I think of a beautiful woman who was very loving and somehow faded away, and for a while was replaced by this hideous creature woman, just a narcissistic thing. And she's still like that, She's just not the kind of person you want near you. I mean, you have to be ruthless sometimes and get rid of people who are dangerous to you or damaging. I mean, a lot of people probably feel that it's disgusting that I haven't made up with my mother, but it would be more disgusting to me to have to endure somebody who was that self-consumed and narcissistic that they would turn their little boy over to the care of nuts and pedophiles so they could focus on their fucking poetry. I'm in the same position she was. I write. I love writing and have to write, but my God, people, there comes a point where there's something that's more important than that. So even with all that, I'm not a person anymore that's tortured. But I'm happiest when I'm writing, because you can relive things that you lived before, and I just love that world.
Okay, well, I just got one final thing I need to ask you. Now, we do know that truth is stranger than fiction, and you've had enough strange truths in your lives, but you still get asked by people, what actually in these books do you make up? And in fact, family of the psychiatrist in Running with Scissors, they recently sued you and lost. And it seems ironic that the only thing that came out of that is now everyone knows their true name.
No, I know. It was a big, hideous thing. People are going to always think I make all this stuff up, or at least make up a lot of it. And I think that the genesis of that is twofold. One is that I remember, like verbatim, something said to me when I was 13. And the new book, of course, has just made it even worse because I talk about taking my first steps and looking through a hole in a saltine cracker. And people just don't buy it.
Yeah.
Buddy, And so I can understand that. But just last night, another one came up to me and loved hearing me talk about that because she's exactly the same way. And when you have this, it's just peculiar because it's like somebody saying to you, how can you sit on the floor and cross your legs? I mean, that just doesn't make any sense. And you think, what? Because it's reviewers. And here's the thing about being a reviewer or a journalist. It's extraordinarily competitive. You've got to be from one of the great schools. And in the States, they want you from Stanford, Columbia, Yale, New York University, Princeton, or Harvard. Now, to get into one of those colleges, you've got to go to the right prep school. And to get in there, you've got to have parents who've got the money. And if you had parents who had the money, you weren't an unsupervised youth living among the savages, So these people grow up in this rarefied air with these privileges, and what they know of the underbelly of life, they learn from Quentin Tarantino films, which is fine, but it's not the whole picture. That's not everything. I mean, every town has that house. You know what I mean? It's that house. Think about your own street where you were growing up. There was that house. Well, I was in that house, and these are the stories from that house. These are the stories from that life, And I think that's the other reason they think I make all this stuff up is because they can't imagine. And that is why I love online, because you know what? It's changing. Because the bloggers are changing it, and there's a range of more voices now. We don't have to just listen to the corporate news.
And it's amazing that the established media is really upset about that. They think this isn't real journalism. It's no good. It's no good.
Growth and change is always messy.
Yeah.
So that's why the internet right now is messy and communications are messy. But mess is the natural state of life. If you can't be comfortable in the mess, you've got a problem because things are messy.
Well, the chaos of my apartment reflects the chaos of your one-room apartment in New York City when you were in advertising. I can't say I'm always comfortable there. I would like to...
No, living with mess is difficult. I can tell you what to do with that. What you need to do is you need to get a large shovel, and you need to go through the apartment and shovel everything into bags. If it exists in your apartment and is part of that mess, then you don't need it. I threw everything. I threw Canon digital cameras away and Leica lenses and magazines, and I threw absolutely everything away. If you really need it, you'd take care of it and have it close at hand. And then what you do is you clean the place and think about, what do you need? Well, the answer is usually that you need to remove something, not add something. That's 99.9% of the time that you need to take something away and just start living with the very, very minimum that you need. And it's just much freer. It's more liberating. It gives you more mental room. It makes you exhale and relax.
So there you have some housekeeping wisdom from Augusten Burroughs. This has been an absolutely fascinating conversation.
Thank you.
But, that little old clock on the wall says it's time to go. So I'd like to thank Augusten for coming in this afternoon.
Thanks for listening.
His latest book, Wolf at the Table, is available now through Picador at all good bookstores. Thanks, Augusten.
And the bad ones, too.